The song?
No, I said, is this the original theme song? Like you made
No,
this for Tech
no,
News?
no, no. It's a song by an artist named Muramasa from outside of London. A young guy, very talented, and that song is called "Lovesick" by Muramasa.
I've
Yeah,
been
and,
meaning to ask that for months. Sounds good.
yeah, it's a great. I never get tired of it. that
Like I
that
said, we cycled through a load of tracks, didn't we?
yes, we
And
did.
then we hit that one and then just never moved on.
That's correct. That's exactly what happened. And that's that. By the way, it's quite an accomplishment because the tracks we were cycling through were none other than Stevie Wonder, and some not.
Yes.
We weren't going through the weak stuff. We started out with the good stuff, and we ended up with that one. So anyway, welcome back. For those who don't know, we meet every day now since March, same bat time, and for the past few weeks, since around December 1st, we've also been doing. We started in Clubhouse many months ago, and now we've added Twitter Space. And what that means is we are simultaneously in two separate apps with two separate audiences with two separate stages, yet everyone can hear everybody else. If you are on stage in Clubhouse or in Twitter Space, everyone can hear everybody. It's kind of amazing how this works. And I get messaged all the time, how did I manage to pull this off? And the answer is actually deceptively simple. I have my phone next to my laptop, and they can hear each other. It's this hot new technology called sound waves, and
Mind is blown.
it's amazing. So it's incredibly cost effective solution. So we've got Damalaire joining in the Twitter space. We got Messi in the Twitter space. We got Eric IO in the Twitter space. We got the Professor Asif in the Twitter space. And this is good because in Clubhouse, we generally have about 300 people in the audience and about 30 people on stage. And in Twitter space, it gets a little one-sided if the people in Twitter space don't talk, right? The clubhousers, they like to gab. They're a talkative bunch, as you will soon see. So I encourage you in Twitter space to hog the mic equally so we get a kind of back and forth. And I'm glad to see Carl on the Twitter space side to help keep the balance. So, and Valerie.
I love the idea that me by myself will balance out
Yes.
all the 20 people on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
I was thinking that
And
as
I
well.
love
Like,
the British.
well,
Yes.
let me shut down
Oh,
Clubhouse and just stay on Twitter
you know
Spaces.
what
How
we
about
could
that?
do? Here's what we could do. We've got Damalaire in Twitter space. We've got Carl in Twitter space. They're both Brits. We've got Professor Asif. We got three Brits all on stage in the Twitter space. We could have the Americans versus the Brits.
The Intercontinental
Yes,
Rumble.
yes.
Yay.
Or
Oh,
we could have,
goodness.
yeah.
Talking across the pond.
Asia
That's a great
land.
idea. Americans bring guns.
Yeah, one side is packing heat. So let's get into
I'm
this.
just curious,
Yeah.
Tyler, just quickly,
Yeah.
what's the volume level like for people in Clubhouse hearing people in Twitter?
I will let
You,
Robert
you
answer.
guys sound pretty good. I mean, your volume is fine. You sound solid, clear, and not too loud.
There
I
you go.
think
Okay,
it's
not too loud was the
loud.
important thing. All right, then.
I
Cheers,
think
man. Thank you, Tyler.
I
Yeah.
think it's I think it's a little bit too loud.
Okay.
I mean, it's also dependent on what your volume is set at because Tyler and them can't you know maintain volume for
Yeah,
everybody.
Clubhouse
So we're
has
just
a
I,
certain
following.
I,
volume for
No,
you.
no,
I
it's
just
not
checked both
Tyler.
sides.
I
I
can
think it's
com
okay for Twitter Space to be a bit louder because the Clubhouse people are just too talkative sometimes. They can't stop.
But also too, you don't want to create an echo if everybody is too loud. It might create an echo, but you should go up to the dots and change the audio quality too if you need help, if you have issues hearing.
Twitter Space, it doesn't have quality options.
I meant for the clubhousers.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
Okay. So
Actually, the loud noise create a lot of back and forth echo, and it makes it difficult for the understanding of words sometimes. And Tyler's voice is perfectly fine, but the other person who was speaking, I'm sorry, didn't get your name. That was kind of loud.
Carl might be a little loud today. So we've got the top headlines to go through. There aren't that many because we're in a time of the year where
Tyler.
yes.
Hi, Tyler.
Yes, Messi.
Yes, Messi.
You usually ask if anybody has a hot topic.
Oh, I do, but let me finish the point real quick. Yeah, we're going to go through the top stories. And then we're going to go through the tweets that everyone's been sharing. And I was going to say there's not that many top stories today because we're in a time of the year where half the journalists are on the ski slopes and hanging out on beaches between Christmas and New Year's. So we're in one of the weeks of the year where there's not a whole lot of tech news because there's a absolute tidal wave of tech news in January with CES. And the PR departments are on holiday, and then they come back strong in January, and it's ferocious news happening all the time. But as usual, I do try to always remember to invite anybody who happens to have a particularly interesting story to start us off. Feel free if there's something you think the class should know about.
Yes, I have one.
I thought you might.
That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Can I go ahead? Or
yes, of course.
Okay. Do you remember the Egyptian ride-hauling startup Swivel that became a unicorn? I think a couple of months ago, is now is going to become the first unicorn. Well, Egypt and some African countries in North Africa also are in the Middle East. So they are categorized Middle East, North Africa, is going to be listed on the NASDAQ in just a few weeks. So according to the information, the ride-hauling startup, it's worth now 1.5 billion. Is going to be offering 35% of the share on NASDAQ through a merger with the U.S. SPAC Queen's Gambit Growth Capital. And the IPO is going to be expected to start on January 22. Like you said, a lot of tech news is going to come, early next year, and this is going to be one of them from Africa. And we'll talk about it, at 9 today when we go to Tech Africa. Thank you, Tyler.
How many? That's 2 hours from now, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you said actually less tech news today, I was happy a little bit because we can be on time, right?
Yes, we will almost certainly promptly end in 2 hours from now and transition over to Messi with the Tech News Africa room. So looking forward to that. Thank you, Messi. Anyone else with a hot story they want to share before we get into the list of headlines? Going once. Going twice. There we go. So the top story today is from the Wall Street Journal, which says they have sources. That means somebody's leaking. And it says, following Frances Haugen's leaks. And what that means is the Facebook whistleblower, the former Facebook team member who decided to hoover up and collect thousands, in fact, tens of thousands of documents and files and leak them to the press, specifically the Wall Street Journal. And that person who did that leaking is named Frances Haugen. So, following Frances Haugen's leaks, MENA, aka Facebook, sought to divide lawmakers along partisan lines to forestall regulation, as Zuckerberg told employees not to apologize, because apologizing implies guilt. And if there's anything we learned during the Trump era, it's don't apologize for anything. Don't even act embarrassed for 1 second that anything's going wrong. And the press had a very hard time holding Trump's feet to the fire because he just, is immune to embarrassment. And that's, he kind of showed that's how you sort of handle the press. But this article says Facebook's, let me, as we do, share this story at the top of the Clubhouse room, and hopefully Cheryl can share it at the top of the Twitter space. So
Can I quickly say something about this headline?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was actually one of your more underrated predictions that these leakers or whistleblowers were gonna come out in full force, because from September, when we first kind of heard about all of these things going on, it's been about 10 leaks from multiple different companies that have been going on.
Yeah.
And throughout to the end of the year, right up until right now, like we're still talking about leakers. So it's one of the bigger things that's happened in tech. It's the year of the leaker, funnily enough.
Yeah. And we had an interesting headline yesterday that Google employees are now criticizing the CEO of Google for being somewhat more cautious and reserved in his communications. And he responded, he says, yeah, because you jackasses are leaking everything I say now to the press. So I now have to be very cautious about everything I say, even when it's a closed door meeting or closed email thread or any of it, because he has to operate with the assumption that it will be leaked because we are now in the age of the leakers. And so, yes, your CEOs are going to be a lot more reserved and less forthcoming in their candor, and that might seem a little off-putting to some people who are used to a little more personal tone from their executives.
Yes, it's the end of charisma. It's the end of being like personable. This is PR, or else you're a nightmare for everybody.
So this article says, let's see, thank you for sharing that, Cheryl. It says, the day after former Facebook employee and whistleblower Frances Haugen went public in October, the company's team in Washington started working the phones. To lawmakers and advocacy groups on the right, according to people familiar with the conversations, their message was that Frances Haugen was trying to help Democrats. Within hours, several conservative news outlets published stories alleging Ms. Haugen was a Democratic activist. Later, Facebook lobbyists warned Democratic staffers that Republicans were focused on the company's decision to ban expressions of support for Kyle Rittenhouse, the teenager who killed two people during unrest in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and who was later acquitted of homicide and other charges. The company's goal, according to Republicans and Democrats familiar with the company's outreach, was to muddy the waters, divide lawmakers along partisan lines, and forestall a cross-party alliance that was emerging to enact tougher rules on social media companies in general, and Facebook in particular. Ms. Haugen's revelations and the thousands of internal documents she took with her when she quit Facebook earlier this year showed the company's influence on political discourse, teen mental health, and other matters. And by the way, Jeff Horowitz, who wrote this story, he was the person who the whistleblower went to leak all the documents. He can't help but not link the word teen mental health to his article, now likely for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th time, that he keeps rewriting, regurgitating these new semi-developments and relinking to his former developments to get he's clearly going for most viewed article of the year because he's doing his greatest hits and linking this article to his previous articles. It says pushing politics to the forefront was one of Facebook's response, in keeping with a sharp elbow approach driven by Mark Zuckerberg, according to people familiar with the matter. The company conducted reputational reviews of new products to deter further leaks. Internal access settings for research discussions on topics including mental health and radicalization were restricted to those directly involved in the work, according to employees and others familiar with the restrictions. Now, by the way, that's a quick comment about that. This leaker was only able to leak because Facebook was set up in a very unconventional way, where all of their 60,000 employees across multiple companies, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, etc., Oculus, are all able to see all documents of all 60,000 employees across all the companies. And what they realized is, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't have let people from Facebook do searches for documents for people from Instagram, for example, because and vice versa, because they're going to find documents that they lack the full context of and don't really understand and weren't part of those meetings. They're not even part of that company. So that was sort of the issue. So Facebook is pretty much ending one of the things that might have been quite unique about them, to operate more like pretty much every other company in the world. And the Wall Street Journal wants to call them out on that, apparently, in that last paragraph. Okay. And the implication is that Facebook should look toward the future and not get bogged down in the messy past. Former executive said Mr. Zuckerberg has told employees not to apologize. In contrast to previous controversies in which the CEO publicly claimed ownership of the company's mistakes and typically addressed them head on, Mr. Zuckerberg has spoken little publicly about Ms. Haugen's disclosures and sent deputies to testify before Congress. Quote, when our work is being mischaracterized, we're not going to apologize, said Facebook spokesman Andy Stone. We're going to defend our record. Facebook has acknowledged changes to its research operation, but pledged to continue to work to understand the impact of its platform. The company has also said it wants to invest billions of dollars to protect the safety of its users. I don't know that there's actually much of a point to this article except to highlight that Facebook, the charge from this article is that Facebook actually had a plan and strategy for how to deal with the Facebook file whistleblower, which was kind of work the Republicans and Democrats against each other, which that I don't know if there's an easier thing in the
I
world
think
to
there's
do.
another angle here, though.
Go ahead,
I
Demai.
feel like what what we're seeing here is the display of Facebook acting like every other company that is a supermassive company, right? Because it looked like Facebook and social media companies were going to be different, but in reality, they're quite the same, and they are like they do have an ability to fail in some regards, if public facingly, like every other company does. And it seemed like social media companies and tech companies almost could do no wrong. Like even with the investments that were going on, it's just like even still up until today, there's a massive influx of investment to tech companies and people that are trying to be mavericks and all of these things. But in the end of the day, the thing is, whether we like it or not, Facebook looking like they bled is just as bad as them bleeding.
Right.
Because they didn't really act as fast as they should have with the PR.
Correct.
So, and that was the one thing, especially when it happened, that we said, because we were on one side, but we were on that side for too long, even as tech people that are at the forefront. So, and then we had to fix it, and then we saw by well, it was 4 days about before Facebook said something. So it's shifted the dynamic. So, and Facebook being the leader of these type of companies, I would say at least, it's one of those things where if Facebook bends, then everybody's going to bend. And Zuckerberg has to say, you know what, we're putting our feet in the sand and saying no. So there's a lot going on here, and it's a super political, as we all know, like with the journalists and the tech companies. And there's a lot of things are going on here, but that doesn't matter to the public. What matters to the public is how they're perceived. So Facebook looked like they bled, and this is the outcome. So we're going to get so much more of this.
Well, essentially, he's accusing them of saying, he's accusing Facebook of saying, of essentially saying, telling Republicans that Frances Haugen was a Democrat, which would then, make them position posture in a way that she's not trustworthy, etc. Okay, is there any strong evidence of that? Secondly, let me just say, Frances Haugen is on. It was published that once she realized that she wanted to, well, what she claims help and save Facebook, so she spent an extra month collecting all of the documents so that she could leak them. She wanted to leave. She knew she was leaving. She stayed on for an extra month to collect tens of thousands of documents to quote unquote help Facebook, to save Facebook, as she calls it. Like that lady in the Stephen King movie, the nurse who keeps, smashing the patient's legs so he can't leave, kind of like that.
Oh, misery.
I just watched, wow, that was
Yeah,
crazy,
but she
but
saved
I
them to
just
keep
watched
them
Civil
awake.
War yesterday,
Right.
and Spider-Man told Captain America that Tony Stark said, "You're wrong, but you think you're right." And in reality, when people are wrong but they think they're right, those are the most terrible people. Not saying that Francis Hawkins is terrible, but it's a really strong place to be in, regardless of whether you're wrong anymore.
Well, here's my point.
Yeah.
She did her best to collect as much damaging material as possible, and then went out to do what you would do if you were set to cause as much harm as possible, which go to the Senate and the Congress and the UK Parliament and share all of these files and. So my point here is that if that's the best of all the documents she could hoover up and suck up out of a month of staying after at Facebook to collect all of these damaging materials, and we have now been exposed to the very best of the, keep in mind, 60,000 employees over 10 years. How many documents, how many gigabytes of files do you think there are in a day out of 60,000 employees? Out of times 365 times 10 years times, we're talking millions and millions and millions and millions of documents. And we should assume that she has found the dirtiest of the grittiest of the ugliest of the belly of the beast of what's possible to be exposed within the organization. And we have to assume she has done that. And looking at it now, a few months removed, I have to say, if that's the worst that was going on at Facebook, then I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised. I would imagine that Facebook had worse stuff going on than what was ultimately revealed out of all of these Facebook files and this whistleblowing.
That's the scary thing about this.
Tyler, what if she's
you either kill it or you make it stronger. And I think that exactly what you're saying, Tyler, that this was just, in the end, was so mild and so mismanaged. And then the message that her expertise in was twisted in with what the media wanted to push. And the whole thing was just mishandled. And it hasn't killed Facebook or Meta. It's in the end, it's just probably strengthened their position, like increased resilience. And that there are issues there that need to be addressed, that need to be discussed. Issues how they handle, but now those conversations maybe won't happen.
I was expecting there would be documents showing Facebook itself was doing really egregious communications with, I don't know, ISIS or the Taliban. Or
really,
I mean that's what
Tyler.
Yes,
I was just going to say, you've been talking about TikTok. And I'm wondering, is anyone from TikTok leaked any documents that, like you said, that TikTok was responsible for some of the things that are damaging things that's happening in the US with people? I'm wondering, we're comparing Facebook, but what about the other side?
Yeah, well, here's an interesting point. And Jeremiah is on stage in Twitter Space. And I would love to know if he is underwhelmed by what was revealed out of the Facebook files, or was anyone surprised at what came out of the Facebook files? To me, it was all a bit underwhelming. I had higher expectations for the stuff that was going to get revealed out of these Facebook files. And if this is all they got, I got to say, I feel Facebook is not nearly as bad as I had assumed that they probably were. So, to your point, Professor Ossoff, there was a headline yesterday that Amazon Alexa, and I would love to hear Jeremiah's thoughts on this. No doubt he saw this story. A 10-year-old girl and her mother were talking to Alexa and said, "Hey, Alexa, give us a challenge, something to do." And Alexa suggested, "Okay, you can put a plug into a wall halfway in and then touch a penny to the part of the plug that's not all the way in the wall and shock yourself." And it's called the Penny Shock Challenge. And it's a TikTok challenge. And Alexa got that from TikTok. And that led to doctors saying, don't do this. And this led to Alexa and Amazon quickly pulling it down and apologizing and fixing it immediately. And yet, it didn't leave TikTok to doing anything, even though the source of it is a TikTok challenge. So, by the way, to loop in Facebook and TikTok on even footing here, Facebook and Twitter regularly put out notices that they've removed lots of state-backed campaigns to cause misinformation. Thousands of fake Facebook accounts and Twitter accounts, and Twitter often reports we just removed 10,000 or 50,000, and Facebook similarly, of these state-backed campaigns to cause misinformation about COVID or the election results or this or that or whatever, right? They're trying to weaponize Facebook and Twitter. Now, TikTok has never said such a thing. TikTok has never said, oh, we just removed 10,000, 50,000 Russian accounts or Chinese accounts. Maybe because it's a Chinese app, they're not looking to remove those fake accounts. Maybe if Facebook consistently, about once every 2 weeks, comes out with a headline like that, accusing these state actors, and every time the name China and Russia appears in those articles more than any others, is it possible that if China and Russia are weaponizing our social media apps, that they would also weaponize their own social media app, aka TikTok, which of course they wouldn't remove the fake accounts, which is why we're not seeing similar headlines from TikTok that we are seeing from Twitter and Facebook, that they are removing these fake accounts. Maybe that's the whole point of TikTok, is to use it as a weapon against Western democracies. Like that penny challenge that was in the big story yesterday with Amazon Alexa, like the assault your teacher challenge, like the challenge 2 weeks ago that shut down schools all across America, the bring your guns to school and shoot up your whole school challenge, which has teachers and principals across America screaming and ringing the alarm bells to local media. And just like the fire department was the ones ringing the bells yesterday that don't do this penny challenge. So you've got fire department captains and marshals saying, hey kids, please don't do this TikTok challenge yesterday. You've got principals screaming, please don't do this shoot up your school challenge last week. You've got doctors saying, please don't do this overdose on Benadryl challenge, because in each case, kids did overdose on Benadryl. Kids did break their necks doing the milk crate challenge. Kids did assault their teachers. It was caught on video. And schools did shut down across America. It seems to me like there is a bit of TikTok is resulting in a whole lot of social havoc, especially with the young folks, especially at schools. Yet, the top story today from the Wall, by the way, in each of those challenges, the Wall Street Journal's headline was crickets, zero, nothing, nada. They're not covering it. Yet they're covering again today, the day after the penny shock challenge that the fire department marshals and captains are screaming, please don't do this, because it's hurt, hey kids, watch out kids. Yet the Wall Street Journal today, 24 hours later, is still talking about the Facebook hurting your kids, where it's, don't get me started. What the hell?
Hey, Tyler.
So Tyler,
Question.
the
There's
difference
somebody
is,
who. Go ahead.
sorry, the difference I just wanted to highlight why the Chinese government is not issuing any um, like stop this challenge kind of deal is because their public, their teenagers are not even exposed to these challenges, because this social app is totally controlled by the government, and their population is not even receiving these kind of impact, and these challenges are not practiced by their kids over there, because the exposure here in America and other states and countries is totally open. So we are receiving all these problems or challenges because of the open access, as opposed to in China, the access is completely controlled, and that's why there is no need for them to issue any of these warning. As opposed to Facebook, they have to retrieve, they have to address these issues because the exposure is unlimited and open. So based on that exposure, we can determine what's happening literally, because they are saving their population from the harmful impact, and as opposed to our population, which is just openly getting assaulted by such psychological warfare.
Hey,
Yeah,
this is
can I
I
just
L.
have a
ask a question,
question.
Tyler?
Is this
Can I
content
hold on
available
wait,
in
wait, since
UK
somebody
Hold the
or
joined
phone.
John.
Hold on. Wait, so we're gonna go.
I was
There
gonna
was a
say John
lady.
was next and then me if possible.
Okay, let's go. John L. Sherrill. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, mine's real short. So somebody who regularly attends this stage is friends with Amy Klobuchar. It would be really interesting, Tyler, if you could get her uh, to find out if she has any insights why Trump threatened but didn't shut down TikTok, why the current administration hasn't shut down TikTok, why all the news media are neglecting the story. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it makes no sense that TikTok is still available for use in the U.S. and I don't understand. There's got to be a reason somewhere that the failure to control it is so conspicuous.
Hey, John, I would like to say, hey, this is Elle. I'm sorry, I do the intros. Just to that question, I haven't seen anywhere where the US has actually gone and shut down an app. They might do a little regulation, say, hey, you need to do this, but they've never shut down because of, nobody wants to get into that whole freedom of speech, freedom of this sort of situations. But also I wanted to add to what Aaron, well, not add to what Aaron, but give a little difference too. So TikTok is not creating the content. If anything, we should go after those content creators who are coming up with those stupid challenges. Because remember, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram is just a delivery mechanism for all this crap. And I would like to see these third party apps because remember, social media, I guess over the past 5 years, we've noticed that all the apps have APIs where you can connect all your information. And instead of you having to upload your videos on different things, you can just click, you could TikTok and all these other YouTube has just made it easier where you could just push all of this out all at the same time throughout all your accounts. So what if these other apps start regulating TikTok or just remove TikTok from being available and making it harder for these people to push stuff out as an alternative to any type of like regulation. Meanwhile, I'm Ellen. I'm done.
Okay, Cheryl.
Oh yes, I'm making kimchi. Oh no, I'm just curious. What is the response of all this violent challenge in UK and in Europe? Like,
Well,
is it causing a problem there as well,
yes,
or is it just a US uniquely US problem?
we read a headline from the UK that says they're banning TikTok usage in all schools, and that there will be severe punishments for students who participate and show any, because you can catch a student for doing this, because the challenge is to destroy your school's bathroom. Well, if you are a kid who has a a TikTok channel, and you've got a video of somebody destroying the school's bathroom, you're going to get in deep doo doo. And they said they're going to expel kids for that. So we've got
Okay, so authorities are actually stepping in before damage is done, right?
Say again.
I mean, the
I don't know. They
authorities
can
or
step in.
somebody
It's going to be reactive.
stepping
I
in
mean,
before
they can put
damage
it
is
out there,
done.
but
I think Carl and Damalari has raised their hand.
Yes. So
Maybe Carl wants to speak.
let's go. Carl Demelaire and Eric all over in Twitter Space in that order. Carl.
I would hesitate to point out that iOS had his hand up far, far longer.
Okay, Eric, Carl Demelaire, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say an interesting thing to observe here is that we're waiting for there to be enough evidence to build up a case against TikTok. Unlike China, we have rule of law, which is we wait until there is substantive evidence for some sort of case. And in this case, we're trying to build up perhaps that kind of argument. So it's going to take some time, unlike in China, where you have rule by law and they can act kind of beforehand. So what Cheryl asked, which is, can they act preemptively to stop these things? No, that wouldn't be within the legal framework because we don't tend to prosecute people before they, damage something or break some sort of law. So just some context in terms of how we would deal with it versus how China would deal with it as well.
Carl?
Yeah, I'd just say in regards to Facebook being focused on in the US specifically over TikTok, I mean, there's several aspects to this, right? Like, for one is that the media can't have too many narratives going on at one time. As in, they kind of have to pick something, focus on it, drill down, drill down, drill down. And if they're jumping all over the place, like, then they're going to lose efficacy. And they really need efficacy on Facebook because of what, we've talked about many times in this room is the effects that Facebook has had on media in the US specifically, how they've taken away their core demographic. It's worth remembering that I don't think in the Venn diagram of the TikTok user base and the Washington Post user base that there's a massive overlap there.
Right.
I think if you were to take the demographic of Facebook, then there's a direct sort of, they are competition. TikTok isn't necessarily at this point competition to the Washington Post.
Right.
And that's in regards to sort of the media. When you start talking about policymakers, I think Facebook is, we take for granted the fact that if you're in tech and if you're of a certain age and ourselves, we adapt and we pick up on things quite quickly. Not a lot of people do that, and a lot of policymakers can't do that. Facebook is a very much known variable. You know, it's US based, it's involved in the US tax system. Any sort of restrictions that the US government can impose on it, any strong arming, any sense of control that the US administration can impose on Facebook has a direct effect to how tech in the US is seen, how taxes are levied. I mean, there's still a problem with tax evasion and everything else worldwide by a lot of these companies. So TikTok, as much as it, from a humanitarian perspective or from an individual perspective, these trends are very viral and much more damaging. Like, Facebook's just more relevant, like, to the US administration and to the US media. And I think that's just why the focus has been on Facebook, even though when you put them side by side and you know, individual instances of issue, TikTok could be argued is the worst at the moment.
Demolaire.
Yeah, I just wanted to say quickly that I think Cheryl asked a question about what is TikTok like in the UK, and I wanted to say it's not very like far from America. However, reading some of the headlines, I just decided to do quick research, a little Google, and it seems like there is just as bad, like what we get when it comes to the broadcast from TikTok is just as bad as America, because I've got one headline here that says school teacher humiliated by pupils in latest TikTok challenge. That was on the 12th of November. There was also another one on the 24th. So, and all the headlines I'm seeing recently are from November as well. So, yes, it's not that far off, I would say.
Yeah, to follow that up, we're very reactionary in the UK as well. Like Cheryl was asking, you know, are we preemptively putting in policies to sort of protect in schools? And not really so much. It's normally after the fact or after something is done. It's still very much the teachers are really struggling and have done for a while in the UK over, you know, where their position of power lies and where their responsibilities lie. And there's a bit of an imbalance there of heightened responsibility but limited ability to do anything about the issues that are arising faster and faster because of, you know, how tech is innovating, the effects of social media and everything else. So yeah, it can be pretty bad here too.
Okay. Next up, second.
Oh, before you go, can I just add one
sure.
comment, please?
Please do.
Thank you so much. I know it's been a struggle to get up. My app is very glitchy. So a couple of things. The first is the U.S. Won't ban an app under free speech or drop an app under free speech. Remember, free speech only applies actors and those acting as quasi-governmental actors. So an app doesn't qualify under those things. So that would be only applicable to, say, a government designed app, or something like something that would apply under a completely different clause. When you see stuff getting shut down or a government suit, that's actually under the amendment, or sorry, the Fifth Amendment and the 14th Amendment. Those are equal protection related clauses, not free speech. So there's just a misunderstanding, particularly in the US, about how that operates. The second thing is we have actually banned apps. So that's what we can do. We can't shut down, the US government can't shut down an app that is like, certainly not in free speech, but the U.S. wouldn't shut down an app from an app store because that is, a private. The store is private space, and the government would only shut it down in something like national security interest or something like that, like if it's leaking information. And typically, what they do is like an outright ban on a particular app, especially if it's a foreign app. That's usually why they would do it. So they did that with TikTok under Trump. And then in November, Biden lifted that ban. So it didn't stop people from using the app if they already owned it. It stopped people from downloading the app if they didn't own it. So there's very specific channels that things happen to operate in, and it's easy to get them confused. But it's important to be a little clearer about what happens, because it's not like there's no interest. It's that the tools aren't used in that manner. So. And then the last thing is about China and Russia. We hear a little bit about, these Chinese and Russian apps and whether or not there's China and Russia bots. In the U.S., our news almost never talks about China and Russia combining forces in order to find out what they're doing, including their new military ties, right? In the U.S., they say, oh, no, there's nothing happening. But if you look in the last month, they've actually done joint military scrambles, and they did something in South Korean airspace that required South Korea to actually come up and they did a flight scramble to be like, what the hell are you doing in our space? So they are planning, like they're joining not only economic but military forces, and you can't find it in U.S. News, but we already know that they are working together to undermine the U.S. dollar as the reserve of choice, and that's not in and of itself news. It's that they're working together with the way that they're developing CBDCs to do this. So that joint action, joint economic action, is new. It doesn't fall under their 2001 agreement, but economic plus financial ties means they're definitely getting closer together, and we have to start considering like a strong alliance between them and what the implications might be.
Well, actually,
I,
Russia would say
I'm
you're
sorry.
pushing me closer to China because you're coming closer to my borders. So I need to secure my eastern flank, which is China, while I have to keep my eye on my western one as you seek to put NATO or you seek to put Ukraine into NATO, and you broke a lot of the rules that we agreed upon. And I'm saying, as a Russian, you agreed upon when the Soviet Union broke up in the early 90s. Bush Sr., who was amazing, was very bright, and there was agreement that there would not be encroachment upon the Russian borders under Clinton. And then under Clinton, they flipped it, and it's been getting closer and closer to Russia. So all I'm saying is we should expect a certain reaction from Russia because we've kind of created it. It's Robert. I'm out.
And I agree with the way laws are implemented in USA against apps and social media. Perhaps we may need to look into the possibility of these people who may be exploiting these weaknesses, loopholes, and specifically targeting in a manner that our laws cannot be implemented for our safety. So that's why there is a need for a deeper understanding of the intentions from where these challenges are coming from. These are surely not innocent kids creating a dance move like trend. They are highly targeted, specific, in terms of the intentions of the results that they are creating. So I call for a deeper look into where these trends are arising from, what is the purpose, and how our laws and loopholes can be implemented or created in a new way to cover these weaknesses.
Hi, this is El. Robert had a room yesterday where we talked about this and we brought it up and we kind of agree. Like, I don't think it that like these particular challenges. Yes, there's probably some type of collected effort to allow the content to stay there. However, the content creators are essentially us. We're the issue. So, if anything, we need to. Because ever since the monetization, like, you get money for likes, you get this for likes, these challenges have become progressively more aggressive. We had people, was it baiting, going into urban communities and baiting people just to get a reaction, or putting there was the guy from YouTube who was baiting someone and he ended up getting shot because he was pretending he had a knife, and he was doing that just because he was a celebrity YouTuber. So that's the age we're in, where people make money off social media, and the best way to do that, to keep up with those likes, to keep up trying to stay edgy and trendy, is to do those things. So that's why we here. So once we start devaluing that sort of behavior, then you'll see a change. But the problem is there is no devaluing. People let their kids do whatever, and they kind of just let whatever content be out there because it is under freedom of speech. But people don't understand there's no freedom from consequence. And if there's no consequence, then this is what we have.
I think Carl from Twitter Space wants to speak.
Go ahead, Carl.
Oh, I forgot I had my hand up. Okay, a quick thought that I just had earlier, which was from Alexandra's amazing summary, was I wonder if any part of this, the fact that there's silence on TikTok, is the fact that they don't, like the likes of the Washington Post, obviously under the hood somewhere has political ties. And if the US can't do anything about it, if they can't do crap about the TikTok issue because of the reasons that Alexandra highlighted, then it's just an embarrassment for them. And, would there be a hidden backroom blowback from their political ties that they have if they focus too much energy on something that the US administration can't do shit about, if that makes sense?
Okay, now I just found something I almost can't believe. If you've been following us daily, as many of us do, a huge percentage of us join every day, and that's great. And that's why this article is going to seem really peculiar. You've noticed, and we've been calling out, the lack of the New York Times covering these TikTok challenges specifically at the schools. I've been screaming like a madman, what the F is going on? Where is the New York Times coverage of, because there's local media coverage in every little town across America of the school principals screaming what's going on, shutting down the schools, right? We've had teachers on our stages in Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces saying TikTok is a huge problem in our schools. We've got parents jumping on stages saying TikTok is a huge problem at my kid's school and shut down my kid's school. And I just found, just now, the New York Times wrote an article about, and I pinned it to the top of the Clubhouse room. And it's not about TikTok in schools. No. It's not about the schools getting shut down on TikTok, for beating the teachers and encouraging them to bring guns to school and shoot up your school. National Shoot Up Your School Day, which was a week and a half ago. No, it's not about that. Here's the headline. The latest high school prank. This is a New York Times headline from a couple days ago. The latest high school prank? ? It's a snooze. Instagram accounts featuring photos of students slouching, nodding off, and parking badly took off this past semester at schools around the country. Oh, really, New York Times? That's the school trend on social media that you're interested in. Is the slouching students at the fucking schools on Instagram? Are you fucking kidding me? We just had National Shoot Up Your Fucking School Day on TikTok. You didn't cover it when the schools shut down across America, and you want to cover the slouching trend on Instagram. The fucking slouching trend on Instagram? Are you fucking kidding me, New York Times? The school principals are shutting down the fucking schools because of TikTok, and you want to talk about the slouching trend on Instagram. Are you fucking kidding me, New York Times?
Hey, Tyler, this is Valerie. I think, we've talked about a few in the past with Bloomberg and their hesitancy in reporting some things in China because of reporters on the ground. I'm going to bet that's part of the story here, that many of these news outlets are concerned about being, say, upfront on these stories and the blowback it could have on reporters based in some of these locations. This is Valerie, and I'm done speaking.
Okay. So, what are we... I pinned the article to the top of the room. Let's have a little look at this New York Times story. Zach Lewis swears he was just resting his eyes. But when a fellow student at Stowe Middle High School in Vermont surreptitiously snapped his photo during English class and shared it with the school's Sleep account, it was hard to dispute the evidence. There it was, book open, lids shut. The dude had his eyes closed, y'all. New York Times.
He's dry snitching, whoever that kid was.
After Zach was tagged in the photo on Instagram, he sent a message to the people who managed the account to remove it. They quickly deleted it. Quote, I wasn't worried about a teacher seeing it, Zach said. I'm just embarrassed to have it up there. But that didn't stop him from secretly photographing another student who fell asleep in English class, then submitting it to the account for publication. Everyone, Zach says, has been trying to catch each other. Part prank, part extracurricular documentary project, sleep accounts are among several types of so-called school accounts that have proliferated on Instagram in recent months, and students have returned to classrooms following 2 disrupted academic years. After many months of pandemic mandated remote instruction, teenagers have come to regard such banalities as their classmates eating, slouching, and parking badly as fodder for amusement and, of course, content. Well, now, there we go. That's what's going on in social media in schools. Right from the New York Times. You heard it here first. The New York Times really covering what's really going on in the schools with social media. No mention of TikTok. No mention of schools shutting down, as they did a week and a half ago for the National Shoot Up Your School Day on TikTok. The beat your teacher out of their, send your teacher to the hospital by assaulting your teacher day. The destroy your school's bathrooms, which by our accounts, if you look into this, you will discover schools all across America had their schools' bathrooms destroyed, including nearly every parent in this room who has kids will tell you that their kids' school bathrooms were destroyed. These are wildly popular challenges that the New York Times is, for some reason, intentionally not covering. No. What catches their attention? The Zach had his eyes closed in English class.
They keep tearing up these bathrooms. I'm going to buy more Kohler stock.
I'm just so glad my sons aren't dumbasses. Like, despite the challenges, or kids know right from wrong. Like, literally, they know right from wrong. So, yes, that content's out there. Yeah, I agree with you about the New York Times, but I just don't understand, like, why aren't they going out after, one, the people who are doing the challenges, and then also, two, go after those kids. I mean, you have to teach a lesson. I mean, they're not going to learn if you don't do anything. Ugh.
Eric, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I would say to comment on what was just said about keeping holding the kids accountable. I think because their prefrontal cortex is not yet fully developed, it's not necessarily appropriate to say that it's all on the kids. Kids are very impressionable, and the fact that we're not covering this in the media, that's actually very troubling because Tyler has been talking about this for a while, and it's not like we're the first one to notice this. And for mass media or these larger news organizations to not be commenting on this at all, I would encourage everyone here to perhaps even write to these big news organizations and say, hey, why aren't you covering this? Because I'm quite frankly at that position right now where I feel very frustrated that this is not being covered because the penny challenge, like as a kid in Germany, I put a nail into a socket and my father had to use a wooden chair to get me to let go of it because the current was so strong. So I know that is very dangerous, but to be promoting that's almost as bad as promoting somebody to commit suicide because that's what could result. So I think we do need to take some action, and especially people who have children. I don't think it's even sufficient to write to the reporters. I think perhaps it's time to write to our representatives and say, hey, look, this is an actual risk to children, and we're seemingly doing nothing about it.
No.
So
No. Instagram.
But I think it's
Nope.
dependent on age, though,
Hey,
with the
hang
kid.
on.
Go ahead.
Nope. That's a narrative violation. The narrative is Instagram's the one harming the kids, not TikTok, not the one telling them.
my bad.
Not the one. Hey, electrocuting yourself. Hey, whatever. It's Instagram. Don't get it twisted. Instagram's the one that's hurting your kids. Don't worry about that app that's encouraging them to electrocute themselves or assault their teachers or shoot up their schools. No. Let's focus on the one that, we've already got our narrative. Instagram's the bad one. Stop with the narrative violation here. Everything's good. Never mind what's going on in the actual schools. Never mind those schools shutting down. To pay no attention to that. No, no, no. We already told you who the bad person is. It's Mark Zuckerberg. He's the evil one. Let's keep the story straight. So the next article is Waymo, which is Google's autonomous car company, partners with Chinese automotive company Geely to bring a rider-first EV with no steering wheel to its U.S. robotaxi Waymo One fleet in the coming years. Waymo One is Alphabet's Lyft Uber competitor that's live in Phoenix and currently undergoing testing in San Francisco and New York. And now they're going to partner with Geely to actually make the cars. So that's what the actual headline. And we were wondering because Waymo itself is the technology of the autonomous and the app for the Uber Lyft competitor of autonomous cars, but they don't make their own vehicles. And the question always was, who would they partner with to do the actual vehicles? And now we have the answer. It's going to be Geely from China, which Geely, by the way, owns Volvo, by the way, in Sweden. And they're building EVs as well in China. Geely's a massive force in the it's China's biggest transportation automotive company by far. It's a juggernaut. So Waymo partnering with Geely to bring EV, electric robotaxis to Waymo's Uber Lyft competitor. It's an autonomous Uber Lyft, no drivers. And why is that interesting? Because that is your electric autonomous vehicle network, autonomous delivery network. Autonomous delivery vehicles delivering not just humans, but your lunch and your food and your Amazon orders 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, doing 10 deliveries simultaneously, 10x utilization, which makes the cost per delivery practically zero.
Geely, by the way, Tyler, Geely also partner with Baidu in China.
So that's the article there. Next article. The Dogecoin bull run in 2021 and recent airdrop of SOS tokens by third-party OpenSea users shows that the only scarce resource in crypto is attention. Any of the crypto geeks want to make a comment on the Dogecoin bull run in 2021? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I do.
Go ahead.
I mean, just it's the whole the Dogecoin was a legitimate um, test, right? So they were doing it as a joke, but also as a test of true decentralization, right? The idea that you could basically set it and forget it, like you could put something together and it could run independently of the founders, and it was successful, right? But even the founders are like, I don't know what the hell's happening here because this is ridiculous. It's a completely inflationary coin. You cannot make a currency out of anything that's completely inflationary any more than you can of something that's completely deflationary. That just doesn't work. So there's only one use case that I could think of interested in doing it. So I have no idea. The idea that it being a doesn't really work because that's not how currency works. It could be people could decide that it's an asset, but that just isn't how currency works. So there's an idea that it's going to form a currency, and there are some fundamental changes that would have to be made, but nobody has really the ability to do this. So I look at this as yet again, this is Elon Musk, who has a certain amount of assholery in his DNA, and he just likes to screw with the markets. And it was one of the first times where I just said, hey, the people who have power over the marketplace, even if they're not insiders or traditional Section 16 people, they still need to be obligated to use it responsibly or be subject to market manipulation. And you can actually track his buying and selling based on what he said, right? So he hates Bitcoin, and that happens to be when he purchases right after that dip. And then he's like, Bitcoin's the best. And then that happens to be when he sells. And then, same thing with Doge, like, oh, it's really stupid. And he did it again with Shiba Inu. He's just screwing with people, and they're taking it, right? Like, they're listening to him. Hopefully at some point people will start, like, realizing that he has his own agenda, and he's freely manipulating prices on the backs of other people, right? Prices don't come and go without any impact, or they don't go up or down without any impact to people. There's always an impact. There's always someone on the other side of that transaction, and I don't think he cares. So I just think, it was an interesting play, but I think a lot of the people who got caught in it tend to be people who are not necessarily educated in investing, in finance, or the fundamentals of currency, and that is something that makes me really angry, that it's just too easy to take advantage of people, and you have to be responsible with the information you offer.
Okay, so
Can I say something here, Tyler?
sure,
Donna?
that's the
Oh,
whole
yeah.
point.
So I
That's
was
why
going
we're
to
here.
say, can you hear me well?
Yes, you sound fine.
Okay. So I was going to say, um, you know, leave it, Dogecoin will be what Dogecoin is, but I do think it complicates the overall regulatory and retail environment, because many times regulation goes down to the lowest common denominator, and Dogecoin tends to pull it down in that way. A, because Musk makes a lot of statements, so he gets a lot of notoriety, and B, people, as Alexandra rightly talked about, the coin in and of itself is not practical for as a currency, and so therefore, the regulators, or at these various hearings, they lump everything together, and that's why I do think some of these things need to be cleaned up and are not just only about memes.
Okay, so for those who, we're now at the top of the hour. We've been going for 1 hour. And as usual, we've done one or two stories out of the list of top headlines that we go through every day. And for those who are new, we are, as usual, now since December 1st, dual apping. We are simultaneously in Clubhouse with 300 people, 30 on stage, and we're also in Twitter Spaces with far less than that, because we only started Twitter Space in December, and we started Clubhouse back in April or so. So did we pass where are we at? 75,000 members over there in the Clubhouse. Not too shabby. So before we get to the next story, somebody just DM'd me a New York Times story about TikTok that just came out. So my apologies. Here's the TikTok story from the New York Times in the recent, since just a couple in the past week. TikTok made them famous. Figuring out what's next is tough. This year, the app's biggest stars leapt from the phone screen to other platforms in pop culture universe. TikTok's making people famous. What an absolute blow to TikTok, this article in the New York Times. I'm sure this is really going to be hard for them to swallow. This is really going to be hugely damaging, writing a piece talking about how people are becoming famous on TikTok. This is just an absolute decimation hit piece on TikTok, talking about how these popular TikTokers are becoming actual Hollywood celebrities. Well done, New York Times, for holding their feet to the fire.
So it comes back to Alexandra's response to why nothing's being done regulatorily on it. It makes perfect sense, and that was a brilliant explanation. But and the explanation that the demographic of TikTok does not compete with the business model of these papers uh, somewhat exculpates their inactivity. But what you just read, in the face of all of these dangerous challenges, there's got. I just can't. I don't understand why they're neglecting the story completely. It is a story, as you said, that's hit all the local press across the country. How could they not report on it? I don't understand.
They're too busy writing BJ pieces about how to become a celebrity on TikTok, and a Hollywood celebrity. You're going to use TikTok to launch your career, is the piece that came out last week. When the schools were shutting down due to the National Shoot Up Your Day challenge, which the BBC covered because they're not funded by advertisers.
And
Uh,
perhaps they see TikTok as a competition for Facebook, and they don't want to reduce the
exactly.
competition for Facebook. So they are
We're
supporting.
on to you, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. We know what you're up to. You want TikTok to kill Facebook. You're not competing with TikTok. You're competing with Facebook. You're writing hit pieces about Facebook for, kids closing their eyes in class. That was the headline from the New York Times this week. At the same time, TikTok has the shoot up your school challenge and schools are shutting down across America. Not covered. Yeah, interesting. So next big article is the LastPass, which is a very popular app for people to store their passwords. LastPass users say their master passwords are compromised and used in blocked login attempts from unknown IP addresses, meaning other people are trying to use their passwords on their websites. LastPass has responded by blaming, quote-unquote, credential stuffing. Many LastPass users report their master passwords have been compromised after receiving email warnings that someone tried to use their passwords, etc. So if you are a LastPass user, you might want to do a little password hygiene there and take a looky-loo into that one. So the next one,
I think. Sorry, just quickly.
Yes.
I'm not a fan of LastPass at all. They've got a series of bugs which I've actually bug reported to them, bug bountied to them. That I just use OnePass, but this particular, I think, is misreported. This particular news report, I think they clarified it and pointed out that the error itself, that the notification that went out to the users was actually an error. So there wasn't any sort of that the problem was that users were misreported to have had their accounts hacked, not that the accounts were actually compromised in any way. So there was a small fuck up by them, but it's not in the way that a lot of the media outlets are actually reporting it right now. But still, use one password.
Okay. So the next article is, where do we go? So Mark Gurman from Bloomberg. You remember the guy who was surprised to find out his discount on his Apple products? The rebates he didn't read the fine print on his rebate. You remember?
What do you mean those details in my EULA?
Exactly. So yeah, Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg is writing that there's sources that Apple issued rare bonuses of restricted stock worth between $50,000 and $180,000 to select Apple engineers after Facebook poached 100 Apple engineers over the past few months. Okay. Apple has issued unusual and significant stock bonuses to some engineers in an effort to retain talent. Okay, fair enough. There you go. Thanks for that one, Mark. So the next one's also from Bloomberg, also about Apple. Apple places Foxconn's. Let's pause there. Foxconn is the assembler of your iPhone, for example. It's the big warehouses, formerly in Shenzhen, that Apple's trying to get to move to India. And the headline is that Apple places Foxconn's new Indian factory on probation following a worker protest and an investigation that revealed substandard living conditions. So Apple's placing Foxconn factory on probation because of a worker protest and an investigation that revealed substandard living conditions. Foxconn apologized for lapses in worker living conditions. Apple has asked for corrective actions before factory reopens. Okay. Next up is DBank, which lets users track and analyze their DeFi investments, raises $25 million, led by Sequoia. And Adam Mosseri, the boss of Instagram, says in 2022, Instagram will double down on video, which is no surprise to the regular tech newsers, as I've been saying they would do that since back in March. Consolidate its video products and focus on creators, transparency, and messaging. In a brief year-end video message, Instagram head Adam Mosseri offered some insights into what's ahead for the platform. Well, I've been telling you since April what's ahead for not just Instagram, but also TikTok and Twitter and Tinder and Pinterest and all the social media apps. And it turns out I was exactly dead on right. As all of you now know, they are doing live social shopping is their big move for 2022. They're all testing it now with the likes of Walmart on Twitter, no less. So the next one is from Reuters. A California federal judge has ruled that the Google CEO Sundar Pichai can be questioned for up to 2 hours in a privacy lawsuit over Chrome, the Google Chrome's browser's incognito mode. Plaintiffs who accused Google's unlawful tracking of their internet usage while in incognito mode. And so the judge ruled, yeah, you can now summon Sundar Pichai to be questioned as part of this trial. So he's going to take the stand for 2 hours. Next up, U.S. Appeals Court rules in favor of the FCC's decision to designate a large swath of the 6 gigahertz band to unlicensed users. After AT&T challenged the FCC, right? Because, they're greedy bastards and they don't want everyone getting into their game. Pretty straightforward. Wall Street Journal, early pandemic winners, meaning investors who made the right bets on how markets would move as a result of COVID. The winners include Cathie Wood's ARK Fund, Peloton, Zoom, of course, Poshmark, DocuSign, obviously, because we can't go to the office to sign the documents anymore, Chegg, Zillow, have seen their market values decline in 2021. Those former tech sweethearts that experienced a reversal in fortune this year could remain in the dumps for 2022. Next, Financial Times. China's control over online culture has grown under Xi's common prosperity drive, removing 20,000 influencers in 2021 and leaving mostly wholesome content. And this is maybe the 30th article of this type that we've seen this year. They all kind of started in the middle of the year when the CCP and Xi started cracking down on the influence of social media on its people. And we've read...
I wonder if that included TikTok influencers, Tyler.
Indeed it did. And we've read dozens of these articles in detail of precisely what they're doing, how they're limiting TikTok to 40 minutes per day in certain hours of the day, and video games are only on Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night for 2 hours each, and on and on and on and on and on and on. Of no vulgar dancing, no vulgar speech. Everybody's face is facially identified when they start the app. If somebody joins your live stream whose face isn't recognized, the live stream ends instantly.
No effeminate men.
No effeminate men was another one, exactly. And it's wholesome content. That's the mantra. Wholesome content. Like shooting up your schools. Like assaulting your teachers. Like overdosing on Benadryl. Or electrocuting yourself. Wholesome content. That's what they're limiting it to in China on their social media apps. So, Wang Jing's hand dives into a mound of soil and pulls out a bulging bunch of oyster mushrooms. Look how pretty they are, the mushroom farmer turned influencer says to her fans on the Chinese version of TikTok, as he strokes the soft caps of the mushrooms. Wang is one of many internet stars whose wholesome and educational content is taking up more space on Chinese social media after censors have scrubbed out content promoting lifestyles deemed to be out of line with the Communist Party's socialist values.
The irony is I'd love to see more wholesome content, quote unquote, on U.S. channels and educational content.
Right.
So how do we get there without,
You want more mushroom stroking. Is that what you're saying?
I really enjoy mushroom stroking. Yes, it's wonderful.
That's not where the money is,
Yeah,
It's not
VPN
clickbait
to
enough,
China,
unfortunately.
download those. Okay.
The country's internet watchdog, the Cyberspace Administration of China, the CAC, has this year taken down 20,000 influencer accounts for disseminating misguided content and polluting the internet environment. After President Xi Jinping became leader of the Communist Party in 2012, clampdowns on online political speech limited what netizens could post, but Beijing's efforts to orchestrate tighter control over online culture has increased since Xi iterated the Common Prosperity Drive in August to narrow the country's large wealth gap. Since then, censors have cast a wider net to catch unwinded accounts, and content that would easily have passed censors a year ago is quietly being taken down over the past month. Fan pages for Korean boy bands have been suspended. Social media posts promoting luxury fashion products have been erased, and financial gurus have been banned from handing out investment recommendations. Kara Willis, the professor at Texas A&M University, whose work focuses on Chinese digital media, said internet celebrities are playing it safe. No one wants to be censored, but as a result, their content has become a bit bland. The accounts of many Chinese celebrities are filled with odes to the government and evidence of their charitable endeavors. A Chinese rapper who goes by the stage name Lei even hosted an online quiz for his fans about the history of the CCP. Quote, the government wants more positive voices on Chinese social media, which tell a good story about the country, said a Chinese academic in Guangzhou, whose research on celebrity culture, social media celebrity culture, influencer culture. Among the approved content makers is Wang Jing, whose videos bring in over 2 million fans from across China into her small farm in rural China, one of the poorest provinces in the country. The leading state media broadcaster, CCTV, featured Wang in a news segment about revitalizing rural economies. The academic, who did not want to share their name publicly, argued that videos casting a favorable view of the country in the form of patriotic lectures from online celebrities or romantic depictions of the countryside feed into popular demand. A lot of people want to see positive videos about China. There you go. So I'd see. Call me crazy, but it seems like they're not doing the shoot up your school day challenge in the Chinese version of TikTok. And
That's because they go after the content creators. Literally, they don't allow them to push that stuff out there because they know that TikTok is just a delivery mechanism.
They're controlling the app. Oh, gee, I wonder if they're controlling the content in the American version of the app too. Gee, it's such a crazy. What a hard puzzle to figure out. This one, so difficult. Oh boy. So the next one, Indian B2B manufacturing services marketplace called Zetwork raises 210 million. Chinese AI company SenseTime, which is no ordinary AI company. That's the facial recognition company that every citizen of China is on, which the U.S. has now banned due to its use on Uyghurs. It raises $700 million in a Hong Kong IPO, below its $2 billion goal due to pricing shares at the low end after delayed IPO earlier this month, because the U.S. has now made it illegal for Americans to invest in that company because of its involvement in the Uyghur genocide. The U.S. released that as they were about the day before they were about to IPO, and so they canceled their IPO momentarily, and now it's back. They were going to do it at a $2 billion valuation. Now they're doing it at $700 million. Next, sources. Iranian hackers were behind the ransomware attack that took down some live streams for Cox radio and TV stations in early June. Biden signs the annual defense bill, codifying voluntary cybersecurity framework for the privacy sector, which operates the bulk of the U.S.'s critical infrastructure. Yes, because our water, food, and energy and critical infrastructure has all become digitized, which has now made it fertile ground for bad actors to attack, including state-backed actors, as a prelude to conflicts. And that's your top headlines of today. And now we get into the tweets. Oh, yes, the tweets that we've all been waiting for. Like the one that Poppy just shared about the TikTok made them famous. Figuring out what's next is so tough now that they're famous. And Poppy also found this one that many people shared, that Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, buy 110 more acres of former sugar plantation on a Hawaiian island. The land bought by Zuckerberg includes most of the Ka Loco Reservoir. You know, a huge body of water which unleashed hundreds of gallons of water in 2006, which is next to the other land that he has, which is a farm. So now he's got control of his own water supply and his own food supply. Oh, you mean like I've been telling everyone in this room to do every day since March? So the king of the metaverse, who's trying to get you to buy virtual land, is buying actual reservoirs for his actual farm.
And water.
A reservoir of water, precisely.
Huge.
Correct. His own water supply for his own actual farm. Real water for his real farm while you buy virtual land. By the way, the previous article I just read before this one, that our food and water and energy supplies are now digitized and hackable by bad state actors. Again, for the 5,000th time, get control of your own water and food and energy, just like the king of the metaverse, Mark Zuckerberg. So,
Well, well, for sorry,
go ahead.
for the so there is a combination of real world plus digital world um, assets at this point. Um, but the only way the benefit to the holder of the asset, real, this would only work if the person that was supplying the this would only work if the person who was selling rights related to the water supply. So you basically will purchase water assets for him, but in exchange you have to get something that is comparable in the metaverse. So not like the right to buy land, or maybe buying land actually gets him water, but it doesn't get a benefit for the other holders. It doesn't mean anything, right? So why would you buy something that gets someone else water rights and in exchange you don't get anything in return? That's not how this combination of real world and digital world works, right? So that's not the kind of right that you would want to purchase or transfer. It sounds like, somebody's just kind of like, maybe I could get people to do this. But that's just not really how it works. But there's a lot of really interesting use cases for combining digital rights and real rights, like our real world rights. And that's actually going to grow a lot, I think. So it's a really interesting area right now. But I think that this kind of is a non-starter. And digital rights are the digital rights that are hackable, or the digital access that's hackable for power and water, is not at all the same thing that exists in metaverses. So those are completely different. And for the power grids, that's actually something that I have a project working with some other people on to fix the access, because there's like 7 main grids that all work together in the U.S. And the problem is there's like weak junctures at each one. So, but anyway, but they're not related to the metaverse. It's just a hackable system because of the way it was built. When it was built, no one thought about hacking.
Okay. So the next tweet that I have here is from Valerie, who's in the audience in Twitter Space, or on stage rather. SpaceX satellite traffic too close for comfort, according to Chinese government. SpaceX reported in July 2021 to the FTC having 1,800 approximate Starlink satellites across 20 countries. And China filed a complaint to the UN saying astronauts on the Chinese space station had to take action to avoid satellites launched by SpaceX. Okay, thank you for that. And hold on, someone's got an open mic.
I read that article. It just seemed to me that people can't play on the playground. There could have been definitely this issue, but to logic and plain wanted to deflect. This is Valerie. I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Valerie.
Yeah, and just a note, it was interesting to hear the kind of, I guess, commentary from Chinese social media. I think it's mentioned in that article how they refer to Elon's satellites as space junk, and this kind of weird animosity, whereas when China and Russia had previously done their own kind of tests, not with satellites floating around, but with blowing up their own satellites, and we said, hey, this is a problem. We literally have to move the International Space Station. There was no response saying that, oh, yeah, we're allowed to do this. So it's interesting to see that the kind of response that there is right now, but definitely something that's going to be a big issue going forward, because if there's enough space junk, it can make space travel kind of an impossibility for all of us. So definitely something to keep an eye out for.
More than that, you can have a cascading effect for which there's a specific name that would start wiping out all of the satellites. When you have one satellite collision leads to tens of thousands of pieces of debris. Any one of those pieces will take down another, and then you get this massive cascade of satellite destruction. And then we have no more satellites, and it has far more implications than just our ability to travel, outside of Earth. It means we have no more satellites. So, and don't have the ability to put them back. By the way, would be kind of the problem. So,
and since China, sorry.
Regarding
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
understanding what NFTs are and understanding that everything at the end of the day is going to be tokenized. I think that this is part of the buildup of what the metaverse is going to be all about. Hearing about some of the guys just mentioned and reading how these things are coming together. But okay, let me go back. So the NFTs basically is going to tokenize everything. You agree?
Well, yeah, that might be the case, but you're thinking of another room. We just cover headlines here.
Okay, my bad. All right, there is a headline though that I know you probably haven't seen yet. I think I sent it to you, Ty. Because it's going to be very powerful. The guy by the name of Reggie Middleton created a bunch of patents regarding DeFi. Back in 2013, he read the Bitcoin white paper, was able to glean some things that a lot of other developers and so on did not. And his patent was just recently granted here in the United States and in Japan. Now, giving some more backstory, he was sued by the SEC back in 2018 for approximately $8 million, and they stripped him of a lot of stuff. Let's put it like that. The story gets very interesting because he's going to be regarded as the father of DeFi. And all of the projects that's built around DeFi, basically he owns them. So from what I understand, what he's going to do is instead of shutting everybody down, it basically cause them to pay for the use of this patent. And nobody's talking about that. But anyway, it's going to be big. And I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate it. We'll keep an eye out for that. The next article that I have is from Ngini, who's usually in the audience in Clubhouse. It's from South China Morning Post, which we have to pause as Ken sent me a great DM a few hours ago. And welcome back, Dave McGinty, to the Clubhouse stage. Good to see you, brother. And the South China Morning Post is still in operation, based out of Hong Kong for the most part, but owned by Alibaba, essentially, and is able to write some rather interesting articles that clearly the CCP is not happy about. And one of South China Morning, one of the other sister publications based out of Hong Kong, just got shut down today in the past 24 hours. So, as Ken correctly says in his DM to me, that we can count on an egg timer how much time is left for the South China Morning Post. But here's an article from the South China Morning Post while they're still in business, but that could end literally tomorrow, and I very much expect it to. It says Chinese live streamers show diplomats' new channel. Foreign ambassadors to China are trying their hand at live streaming and finding it an effective way to export products and ideas. They are being helped by seasoned streamers keen to tell China's story well and popular enough to sell 26 tons of Afghan pine nuts during a broadcast. You know, that's a lot of pine nuts, 26 tons. Ceylon tea, biscuits, wine, and other Sri Lankan products adorned a booth at the Chinese International Import Expo in November, as Palitha Kohona did his best to sell his country's exports to more than 300,000 viewers on his live stream debut. You know, first time he tried it, 300,000 viewers. The Sri Lankan ambassador to China faced a language barrier and was visibly uneasy at first, having forgotten that he had agreed to host the broadcast, but the audience flooded the comment section with welcomes, especially after Chinese live streamer encouraged him to wave at the camera and told him how to say hello, my Chinese friends, in Mandarin. With that, he joined a list of ambassadors to China who have used live streams to present their country's wares to Chinese consumers, as well as promote China back home as a lucrative market that can enrich their own people. The envoys have been helping hand in their initial steps into live streaming in the shape of prominent Chinese presenters and influencers who have amassed large followings in a market that internet analysis firms value at $149 billion last year. So yes, this is all about the massive trend of live streaming where you can sell 26 tons of Afghan pine nuts to 300,000 live streamers in your debut. That's how big.
And Tyler, pine nuts go from anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 a ton.
There you go. So the next article is from Dr. Fran from Reuters that U.S. reality TV star Paris Hilton launches metaverse business on Roblox. Paris Hilton commands as much as $1 million a night working as a celebrity DJ, entertaining partiers in clubs in China, Dubai, and the Spanish vacation islands. And now, of course, she's launching a metaverse business on Roblox. As you do. And the next one's from Poppy, that Woods carried out, an Australian farmer plants possibly the first ever sunflower crop using a drone. The Queensland farmer services pilot produces what he believes to be the world's first sunflower crop entirely planted by drones. Why is that interesting? Here's why that's interesting. Because, as Chris Vornoff and I have talked about, we could potentially use drones to spread bamboo or hemp seeds wherever it can possibly grow as fast as we can possibly spread it. That could become a global initiative to draw down CO2 out of the atmosphere. In fact, if you sit down and try and calculate the most efficient ways to draw down the CO2 in the atmosphere that's likely to cause catastrophic calamities in our very near future, covering the planet with hemp seeds and bamboo seeds could be a very good use of our time and money and energy and resources, either by drones or what have you. So that's the relevance there. So, by the way, a sister article, also from Poppy, that I'm retweeting to the Tech News Twitter account, is drone delivery startup called Zing taking the Uber model to the sky. A Florida-based drone delivery startup, Zing, plans to operate like Uber Eats or DoorDash using drones in the sky. Yeah, just like Google's project called Google Wing is doing in outside of Adelaide, Australia, as I recall. Apple aims to prevent defections to Facebook with $180,000 bonuses for top talent at the end of the year, as everyone starts rethinking what they want to spend the rest of their lives working on. And Facebook is very actively campaigning to get talent from Apple. Now, what's interesting about that is there used to be a secret truce between Microsoft, Apple, Google, the big tech. And in fact, there was at one point a bit of a class action lawsuit to expose that and break it up. And it was the Silicon Valley legend says that this was instigated by Steve Jobs with Google. And Jobs said, if you poach any of my talent, I will slit your throats. And I'm not poaching your talent. You shouldn't poach mine. Let's make a deal. They looped in the other big tech companies. And it's been that way ever since. There's an unspoken rule. They don't poach each other's talent. And that's now that Steve is long gone. And now that there's a new CEO at Google and Microsoft and everywhere else, now the gloves are off. And now these salaries are going to get ridiculous for this talent. And that's why they had this collusion to keep this not poach each other's talent, because they knew the only thing that it would do is end up doubling, tripling, quadrupling the salaries of these very talented individuals.
Hey, Tyler, I thought the whole thing with the that unwritten agreement, air quotes, is that there was an expiration date on it. Like X amount of time goes by, we will not poach and do all that stuff. I thought that's what you had reported last time when you brought this up.
I don't remember an expiration date on that.
The Department of Justice got involved and actually put the kibosh on the whole thing. So it's not just an agreement or unwritten agreement. They actually got involved.
Okay, yeah.
And this poaching is just going to get probably even more competitive and fierce as the fight for the metaverse, intensifies going into 2022, especially with VR. We see Google already taking people from Meta, people going from Google to Meta, from Apple to Meta, from Meta to Apple. And so it's like almost like this triangle of just poaching each other. And I think just like next year is just going to get even more intense and fierce. It's amazing that you have to provide these incentives, 180,000, I believe I read correctly, of incentives for for people, engineers to stay in their limited. That's amazing.
Yeah, I saw that 180 grand thing that yesterday where that's like some of the bonuses that they're offering, but that agreement didn't actually end up getting broken. So it's not a written agreement. So the idea was it was collusion, right? And it was an antitrust issue. But it wasn't actually broken until Uber took Waymo from, I think it was Google, where they were ready to start the suit before they knew that there was confidential information that may have, been acquired as well. They were so pissed that there was a defection from one to the other that they had that's why that lawsuit happened so quickly. They had the lawyers lined up ready to go as soon as they found out that something was going from, like, someone was going from one of the big companies and not to another one of the companies. So they were super mad, and that, I think, is what eroded it the most once that lawsuit happened. I don't think that it was any sort of like DOJ action or anything like that. I think it was literally that that particular major defection is what started this trend of, moving between companies that started to trickle through. And I guess this 1.8, like, that's an incredible bonus. That's, some like the majority of the population, that's like 3 years salary in a bonus.
So Poppy found one from Wired that climate change may make hurricanes hit sooner and last longer. A new study modeling storm behavior under a warmer climate finds Boston and Norfolk, Virginia will face higher risks from floods due to stronger hurricanes. And PT Yoder found one from Business Insider that TikTok is opening 300 restaurants to deliver some of its most viral food trends. Consumers will be able to place orders for TikTok Kitchen through Grubhub starting March of next year. And Evan found this one from AP News that autonomous trucker company called Too Simple logs its first no human road test. A semi-truck completed an 80-mile route in Arizona with no human on board and no human intervention during the trip. And I wonder if it stopped at a truck stop and honked its horn to say hello to all of the human truckers.
Reminds me of that Stephen King movie where all the trucks and cars come alive. What was that called? That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Maximum Overdrive, I think it was called.
Transformer?
Oh, good one. Good catch.
Valerie has the next one from the World Economic Forum that AI can make water usage efficient to manage this precious resource. This can change farming and food production. How AI can help water go further in farming and drip irrigation is kind of the answer to that one. Evan found another one that a 62-year-old Australian man, paralyzed following his diagnosis with ALS, has become the first individual to send out a message on social media using a brain-computer interface. And here's the actual tweet that he twatted, where he says, "No need for keystrokes or voices. I created this tweet just by thinking it." And that's his tweet. And I just retweeted that to the Tech News Twitter account.
Amazing progress. ALS is such a horrible disease. It's great to see something like this.
Yes,
I'm the last person that needs that chip, because just think what we say in our head that we refrain from saying.
But if he's totally
Definitely not making it.
paralyzed, how can we be sure this is correct or not correct?
But he's paralyzed motor system, like his arms and legs and body, not his mind. He can still think. People with ALS, their brain is still functional.
So
Their
you
body
mean we ask him and he like blink his eyes or something to make sure this is the correct one?
are functional. Yes, he can blink.
Okay.
Can you imagine what it can do for, like, locked in syndrome, which is, in my opinion, the worst thing that could ever happen, right? That's horrible, where you have no ability to communicate, but your brain is still fine, but you can't, like, you're completely immobile, and there is no way to communicate with the outside world. I think that would be phenomenal to be able to do that, as well as see, like, do people in comas, can they understand language? Would they communicate if they were, is it a muscular thing? Or, I mean, it's kind of revolutionary, right? I mean, I think that's pretty incredible.
Fascinating. And people with paralysis, with the speech impediment, I'm not sure if, people with paralysis, they have the comprehension, depending on what kind of stroke they had. But implications or usages are very fascinating.
Okay. Next one is from Lux P. China's small Beijing 3 satellite can take high resolution images of U.S. cities, capturing high definition images over a 1,470 square mile area of San Francisco Bay Area within 42 seconds. Chinese scientists say that the high resolution images of U.S. cities speed its American counterparts can't match. The satellite can rotate rapidly in orbit without compromising image quality. The unprecedented feat means China can scan large areas in a single sweep, all in high definition, over 3 million people. What does it say? Beijing 3 captured high-resolution images that could identify individual vehicles over the San Francisco Bay within seconds from a satellite. I wonder how they're going to use that in China. A small 1-ton Chinese satellite can quickly snap high-resolution images of U.S. cities that are so detailed they can identify individual military vehicles and the weapons they carry, Chinese scientists involved in the satellite project said on Tuesday. So the next one is, thank you for that one, Lux LP. The next one's from Jeff G. from South China Morning Post while they're still in business. Why Omicron may be the final coronavirus variant of concern. That the virus that caused it will probably become an endemic virus that slowly mutates over time, blah, blah, blah. You've heard this all before if you're a regular tech newser. And Vinay shares this one from Reuters that red hot startups face a year of down rounds. The startup frenzy is due to pause. Venture capitalists had invested more than $600 billion around the world. And it is indeed going to be difficult to keep that pace going. That's a fair point. And then Evan, speaking of satellites, has this one about Russia. Russia's Star Wars missile enters service amid tensions with the West. So Russia test fires a missile early Monday. The missile blows up Cosmos 1408, a defunct spy satellite over Russian territory. Then 1,500 pieces of debris begin orbit at 17,000 miles per hour. Astronauts on the International Space Station, orbiting 260 miles from Earth, are told to shelter for 2 hours as debris passes.
As someone who lived during the Cold War era, it seems like there's more heat in this Cold War than the last one. I don't know. Is it just me? Like every day there's some new aggression or some new military development or, news from Ukraine. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Poppy just found this one that
I
Singapore.
covered news. Sorry, Tyler. I covered this news about the ISS going into the security protocol for 90 minutes, where astronauts had to take measures, and for 3 sun cycles they had to continue, that protocol, but ended up safely because the debris did not reach ISS, and the original intention, or like the accident, was not determined back then, which now you are saying was intentionally done. That is news for me, because earlier it was suspected that the debris was just there and coming this way to the ISS, as opposed to someone intentionally kind of blowing up a satellite.
Okay, so speaking of space, former SpaceX engineers launch a robot restaurant in Los Angeles that makes pizzas in 45 seconds. I'm tweeting this and I'm going to pin it to the top of the clubhouse room so that you can see the robotic arm that they're using, which is Sweden's ABB, who is the biggest robotic arm company in the world by far. And there you can see the photo of the ABB arm making pizza in 45 seconds. And with perfect, once you've mastered the recipe and got the amazing pizza, of course, you can replicate it perfectly every time in 45 seconds. Good luck, humans. Um,
That's wonderful. Being an ex pizza delivery guy, I mean, I'm telling you, that's something we shouldn't be doing. It could be a much better job, a lot quicker, much more efficient, and I can't wait till they're delivered by drones too.
it's coming. We talk about it daily, and now you've got SpaceX engineers making a pizza making robot that can produce a pizza in 45 seconds. The machine will begin operations in 2022. It's getting a whole lot of coverage. No doubt it will also have autonomous delivery. It's called Stellar Pizza, a robotic restaurant and the brainchild of three former SpaceX engineers, and based in LA. So here it comes. Whole lot of and then
Oh,
by
we
the
have
way, next
pizza though. We have pizza that's ready in 3 minutes. We have all that, the fast wood fired stuff, like even at farmers markets. I mean, I don't know. I don't need like 40. I appreciate that it's consistent, but 45 seconds seems like I don't know why, how
A
much.
raw pizza,
Yeah, not necessary. Like what? That's
soggy crust.
I think you should taste and judge after. Yeah, I mean you after you taste, but now we don't know. Yeah, how it tastes, so it's hard to
I'll
judge.
go get some and I will tell you because we do eat tons of pizza here. So yes, I will get some and I will tell you if it is crap or not, and it will be an honest assessment of it and whether or not 45 seconds versus 3 minutes makes an enormous difference in an individual's life.
I wonder if the Italian nonnas are crawling in their grave right now hearing that.
Oh my God, and they're Mamoni boys, right? Like they're all just like, "What are you doing?"
It's like sauce out of a can or a jar.
So the next article, let's see if it can pin to the top of the clubhouse room here. It says from China's mouthpiece, the Global Times, that China unveils a 5-year plan for robotics and smart manufacturing amid global race, move to bolster competitiveness amid global race in advanced manufacturing. China on Tuesday unveiled a 5-year plan for smart manufacturing, vowing that large manufacturers will basically achieve digitization by 2025 in a bid to bolster the technology and market competitiveness of the sector in a new round of fierce global race in advanced manufacturing. The plan, released by the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology and 7 other departments, came as countries such as the US, Germany, and Japan are also pushing to boost intelligent manufacturing. By 2025, more than 75% or 70% of large-scale Chinese enterprises should be digitized, and more than 500 demonstration manufacturing facilities will be built nationwide. Like yada yada yada. Next article. That
Hey
Singapore,
Tyler, what will people do then? Like, so
they're going to grow
in
their
that
own
5 year
food.
plan, right?
They're going to grow
What
their
will
own
people do?
food in their backyard.
Yeah,
No,
We're
in,
going.
in China, in China.
an
Yeah,
employment
China's
risk because that's like
got
one of the
a lot of.
last bastions of like regular pay. But I ran a manufacturing facility, like a large scale regional manufacturing facility, and the need for upgrading is so desperate, especially like in the US. From what I've seen from other plants and the one that I ran, they're like the last upgrade they had are these equipment from the 50s that was last updated in the 80s, and it's very very inefficient, but more than that, it is so subject to human error that it's a huge risk. Like we made food and we had an assembly line and we still had bread that someone finally told me after it was all delivered that there was metal in it, and I was like, that is insane that you guys are not catching this or mentioning it or whatever. That's the kind of thing that yes, it is work that is important, but people need a lot of oversight, and I know that's a very unpopular thing to say, but especially in these kinds of jobs that are like line manufacturing jobs. I totally respect Patagonia for innovating a lot on this, but the amount of people that you have to have constantly overseeing because of the huge amount of risk is it's overwhelming. So I mean, I ended up actually creating a couple of, like, modifying a couple of pieces of equipment and then buying new equipment, just because the risk is so high and the people are not as vested. No matter what you do, it's a lot, but people are not as vested in an outcome as you would want them to be. I mean, the stories, man, just it's tough. It's really tough. I get it why they want to do this. It's necessary.
Okay.
Dark factories and social credit.
Yeah. The next
Well,
one.
no, I mean it kind of makes sense. They've gone back. It's like you took people out of the factories, took them to the big cities, right? And they're going to go back to the land, right? And if this plan works out, which it will, if it's in the 5-year plan or 10-year plan in China, they'll make it happen. And so now, yeah, there's going to be a lot of empty space, right, in cities. Interesting.
Singapore engineers build a robotic arm with special robotic fingers with delicate grip, touted to be able to grip objects ranging from soft and delicate items like strawberries to bulky and heavy. The robotics system is designed to meet the needs of industries like picking strawberries without crushing them with a robotic hand. And we covered the SpaceX engineers blast off into pizza robot business. We got that. And it's called Stellar Pizza. Now there's a video on YouTube with the founders that I'm just retweeting now to the Tech News Twitter account. And that does it for the tweets. So we are at the end of the tweets. Good to see you, Cal. What was your favorite article lately? I know there was a Hong Kong news outlet that got shut down today.
Yeah, no, I put that up there. Yeah. I knew that you'd cover that because that's an ongoing kind of restriction of media that's going on. I think I'm tweeting a bunch of stuff. Just the Elon Musk renegotiation with the Chinese government, effectively because they're picking on his SpaceX satellites and stuff. But I just think I mean, you've been talking about this for like months, right? The underlying, the way I put it is the renegotiation with the. He made a deal with the Chinese government, and now he's renegotiating that deal, or they're renegotiating with him. And Tesla is not that big a leverage point, in my personal opinion. They've learned, EVs are big now in China, and they've learned a lot of things from Tesla, car design, mass manufacturing. Not as well as he's going to do it. He's just an absolute genius. But and he and his team. But I think that was one I was curious and just watching. The effects a point of view on Tesla, the stock, right, the share price, but it also affects what they'll do. Tesla might focus on other geographies and stuff. So I watched that one. That was interesting. Yeah. I've been tweeting about that. I think you saw that. The other thing is just the Omicron. I think Professor Asif's probably covered it here, but in the UK here, it's I think there's an underlying assumption that this is a very different virus, different strain, and it affects things differently, and they're just basically keeping things open, which is very interesting. It's kind of like what they wanted to do at the beginning of the pandemic in the UK, and then just got it wrong because the hospitals got filled up. But they'll kind of let that happen again here. There's a couple of things, but hey, Happy New Year, my friend.
Likewise.
It's been a big year. At the beginning of this year, I learned how to do social media with you.
Yeah, yeah.
I learned it from you.
Yeah, we learned it together. The interesting bit is that due to the SpaceX Starlink satellites that China at the government level is, complaining about to the UN, and that Cal and I think we both saw headlines that from China saying that Chinese citizens are taking to social media to saying that the SpaceX satellites are junk, and you and I know that what happens is that's sort of because of the way that the government controls the media and the narratives, utterly and completely that kind of a message that citizens are saying this, it means that basically that the state is approving of the citizens doing that, and that makes sense because one of the government officials referred to SpaceX satellites as space junk, and this does not bode well for Mr. Musk's businesses in China going forward. And I wonder to what degree that China might feel threatened by space Starlink satellites bringing internet to people in China who might now have a way of getting Western internet. Or
yeah, that's part of the thing as well. But it's you picked it up exactly right, because we've learned over the years, over the months, like here, that the headlines are they're just almost like totally misleading if you just look at them out of context, right? They're just, it's not even about the satellites. Maybe we don't know, right? It might be, might not be, might be a renegotiation with him. There's one other thing, Tyler, that was kind of interesting to me. I don't know if you guys discussed it. Maybe I haven't brought it up, but maybe do it another day. It's these a bunch of crypto guys are looking to buy the Blockbuster video brand.
Yes.
Right. I find it fascinating. I'm just so interested in it. Sort of watch these brands kind of die out, right? And kind of maybe there's something. I mean, I just want to watch the journey, because even if it fails, this is an interesting avenue, right? Where you've got this kind of renewal of a brand, you can bring it back in the game, and then they're talking about a decentralized. I've joined their Discord for fun, right? I've joined that particular just to learn this DAO Discord that they have. It's very interesting. There's so many ideas in that. Like this is the new brainstorming. These Discords, right, where they have the DAOs, whether the whole thing works or just goes flat or not. I'm like your friend says, Jason says, I think it just teaches us a lot about where innovation is going to happen, right? And the ideas in there already for Blockbuster, right? He's like, I mean, like all the things to renew it and to decentralized streaming platform, and I mean, there's just phenomenal amount of imagination in there. And if you can get that imagination under a governance structure with the financing, who knows? This kind of structures could, revitalize a brand. I mean, it's the end of consultants, right, as we know it, right? the transformation consultants.
Funny that the word blockbuster in the concept of blockchains.
Yes, that too.
Absolutely. Could have kind of be reborn in a new context that it could be very relevant to Web3. So, and
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Cal mentioned the comparison between the Chinese EV market and technology with Tesla. My question is that Tesla was qualified or kind of classified as SAE level 2, which some people say there should be a level 4. What level is Chinese EV technology at right now? Because that's going to determine how fast they can move towards the complete automation.
I have a way of thinking about that. I think we discussed it ages ago when we had Duffy and Gang. Do you remember? We talked about these levels and stuff. But the one thing I've learned is that the level is from the experience that the customer has, right? So if you have in some Chinese cities, if they're developed and the streets and everything are like completely orchestrated for less distraction, and they're just built for a certain type of EV to work on it, there'll be autonomous vehicles running around there, but those same vehicles wouldn't work in downtown San Francisco or something, So, but the experience for the customer there would be a level 4 experience. So if you turn it around from the technology to the customer experience, who's getting a level 4 experience? And I think that'll be the contextual to the city, the place, and the environment that they set up. And I think in that, China's got a massive advantage because they can build whole environments, right, and control all aspects of that environment. So anyway, that's just a way to think about it. That's a good question. That's a good thought.
Yep.
Right, because certain What was that?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering which EV companies are incorporating level 4 and beyond capabilities right from the get-go, from the beginning, and which companies are catching up or based on, they are basing their autopilot upgrades, like on the upgrades, software upgrades and stuff, because that is also a point to ponder upon, not only just the structure, outside structure, but the cars built, how they are, because I know Tesla have a lot of capabilities built in already, and they can go ahead and progress really fast, as opposed to certain other EV companies which are just catching up.
So if you only, there's so much that they've caught up. Like, I'm honestly, Waymo and everyone, they've just caught. I mean, and there's new technologies like the Tesla's picked. The people like Io might know better on this, like in JT, the technology guys in here. But I mean, there's the lidar technology, and Tesla's picked one technology, not the other. But I mean, the reality is when I look at it, I'm not as a technology guy, but from sort of an investor and sort of, I look at these things. They've caught up. I mean, like. This is I see Oxbotica here, which is a company in coming out of Oxford. These guys, the software that I've seen these guys have, and they have these little vehicles running around autonomously in Oxford now, doing test runs, etc. I don't think Tesla's ahead from that. I think they're ahead because they know how to scale this stuff. They know about infrastructure, scale. I think everything that Elon said in his recent podcast with Lex Friedman, I think he did this amazing podcast where he's literally focusing on scale. He's like done with prototyping and how to do things in massive scale. I think that's what they have as an advantage, more so than the specific individual car technology. I mean, that's just an opinion, though. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I agree upon the scaling and also the presence of Starlink and satellites, because they would, the satellites would also help.
Yeah. So that brings us to the top of the hour, and Messi's going to do Tech News Africa, if I recall correctly. So, if you're... Yes, right now. Yep, right now. She's going to get that room open. So we will hopefully see you over there, although that will be only in Clubhouse, not in Twitter Space. So thank you to everybody.
Happy New Year. Great
Hey,
call. Cheers,
Amy,
guys.
Amy, happy
Happy New Year,
1 year
everyone.
anniversary in
Yeah, thank
Clubhouse.
you. It's
Yeah,
like
happy New
my
Year,
mother's
everybody.
Happy New Year,
birthday.
everyone.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
And thanks for hosting the room
Happy
yesterday,
New
too.
Year.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care, Tyler.